But on behalf of the 503 lives that were extinguished that day, I say, Moira Queen, your remorse comes too late.
I was a little late. Court case episodes of TV shows can be very hit or miss, so I was curious to tune into this episode since I'd only ever seen it a single time before. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak on the legal side of things. I'll try to get people who know more legal stuff than me on the show in the future episodes so that we can see how legally accurate each of these court episodes is, of which there are 6 I can name off the top of my head, 3 of which are on Arrow. We clearly don't see the entire trial taking place, but there are a few things I can immediately glean from it. Firstly, this is clearly a criminal case that's being made against Moira, and secondly, Thea had to have been the defense's witness and we were seeing Adam's cross-examination of her. I can tell that second part because he was asking Thea leading questions and Jean wasn't objecting, which can only happen during a cross-examination.
Do you remember when you visited her?
Not the exact date.
It's okay, I have the visitor log here. October 9th. Why did it take you 5 months to visit your mother?
Your Honor, if I may...
I want to hear this.
As for whether Laurel prosecuting Moira is a conflict of interest, I'm going to restate that the conflict of interest benefits Jean and not the prosecution. I called it out as odd in a previous episode.
This is a conflict of interest. Ms. Laz practically grew up in the Queen House.
As Jean says, Laurel practically grew up in the Queen House. So wouldn't that mean that Laurel being on the other side would be working to get Moira a lesser sentence? I actually think Jesse Hernandez on TikTok does a good job explaining a conflict of interest. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check out his video. If the district attorney appointed Laurel knowing she might be more willing to aid the opposing side, who am I to judge them for stupidly taking that risk? Frankly, I think the only issue with this specific incident of conflict of interest was that Jean, the one Laurel might be helping, was the one to bring it up. And then there's the issue of Adam's trump card, the confirmation of Moira and Malcolm's affair. As far as I can tell with my limited knowledge, this is the only instance of something legally inaccurate in the episode. Legally speaking, Adam had to have brought this to Jean's attention if he intended to bring it up in trial, and even if he didn't, it wouldn't matter since Laurel can't bring it up unless it was brought up by Jean. Since we don't get to see Moira's direct examination, I can assume that Jean asked Moira if she ever cheated on Robert. That would be the only way that Laurel could bring in this piece of evidence. The prosecution putting all their eggs in the Moira-Malcolm affair basket would have been stupid even on a good day, and it definitely requires some squinting to understand why Laurel's able to bring up the evidence at all. Oh, and what happens in a trial when lead counsel gets kidnapped? I feel like that would be cause for a mistrial, but I scoured the internet for a while and nothing came up, so I can't be sure about that. There definitely would have been a huge scandal about that verdict, though. It does take some squinting to figure out how Count Vertigo isn't a human vegetable anymore, but he makes for an alright antagonist for the episode. Honestly, I would have preferred if it wasn't Count Vertigo, though, and not because I know what this show has in store for his formula. He's just used as a plot device to make it so Laurel is the one prosecuting Moira. There were definitely ways to stop Count Vertigo without killing him. Oliver could have shot him in the arm, the leg, the shoulder like he did with that lawyer in Broken Dolls, and Oliver definitely had a moment to aim slightly lower. And this wouldn't be a big deal if Oliver didn't do that exact thing during the season 5 finale. And that's not the only opportunity in the episode Oliver has to stop Count Vertigo this way either. He has a chance earlier in the episode to do the same thing, and he just doesn't because the plot didn't say so yet. But what I'm more worried about is how the hell Count Vertigo got up to Oliver's office. Am I really supposed to believe that there's not a single security guard, hell even a single secretary in that building? I can only be so accepting of the plot saying things must happen before they get kinda stupid. And this isn't even the dumbest part of this scene since Oliver doesn't have his hood up and isn't wearing his green face paint to go stop Count Vertigo. What if Isabel Rochev sees Oliver wearing the suit? What if his face gets caught on camera? Yeah, that's something Oliver actually has to worry about since Felicity can't shut off the cameras from the Arrow bunker. This is literally the dumbest decision in this entire episode. And another thing that makes me scratch my head is how Felicity identifies that logo from the video broadcast. Yeah, the human eye is a reflective surface. Have you seen how my eyes catch the light of my computer screen or webcam? But how much did Felicity have to enhance that image to get a clear shot of the building's logo? A logo that wasn't present in the background of any shots Count Vertigo was recording, no less. Seth Gable is once again great in the role of Count Vertigo, and his zany attitude hasn't gone anywhere since recovering from human veggie status. I'm glad he keeps his trench coat and cross necklace, which I do feel is a big part of this version of the character. This is also the first and only episode where anybody dealing vertigo is referred to as Count Vertigo, and he does it to himself no less.
I'm Count Vertigo, and I approve this high.
I truly adore the scene where Laurel goes to see Moira in prison and begs her not to testify. As an attorney, Laurel has an obligation to do her job and not hold back information, especially the information that Malcolm and Moira had an affair. I really like her body language, how she flinches and backs off just from Oliver looking at her, and she even rejects Oliver's apology and acts like she wants him to hate her. This is a great episode for Laurel. And I really like that Oliver shows an air of professionalism and understands that Laurel's just doing her job. For once, a character on a CW show doesn't take something personally. And that's great. That scene of Roy encouraging Thea to punch him is something I probably would have cut from the episode if I were to give this a full breakdown, but it shows a lot of how Roy's matured since we first met him. I even understand where he's coming from and the way he's trying to help Thea get her anger out. Sometimes the only way for you to feel better is to punch or throw something. There's these drawings in Count Vertigo's cell that I assume he drew when he was in that mental institution. Some of them are Arrow related, but they're all different depictions of death in some way. There's a guy with so many arrows in him that he looks like a pincushion, a guy with a bunch of needles stuck in his face, an Iron Maiden, some guy who fell out of a plane, and something I'd rather not talk about for mental health reasons. But yeah, it's up there. Oh! There's a man getting struck by lightning over here! That's a Barry Allen Easter egg! Let's go! The fact that the prison wall splits open exactly in the shape of an arrow is a little on the nose, but it works because it's this show. That's really the only notable shot that I found, and I've already mentioned everything else I found visually appealing. This is one of those episodes you really can't skip on a binge. It's the big conclusion to the storyline of Moira's trial, the return and death of Count Vertigo, the next step of the island plot, and the reveal of Malcolm being Thea's real father all in one. Not to mention this episode also has a cliffhanger, which I give extra points for. Despite some of the plot holes and a bit of questionable legal accuracy, it's still an enjoyable watch, and another great episode in a continually fantastic sophomore season.
We're really on the no-killing wagon. Shame. You're really letting one of life's true pleasures pass you by.